and we are certainly determined to do everything we can to help Ukrainians fleeing the theatre of conflict.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, the Right Honourable Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very glad the Ambassador is here so he can hear me repeat what I've said to him privately on a number of occasions, and that is that this House and this country stand united in our support for the Ukrainian people in the face of Russian aggression. And we're all appalled by the shocking footage that's emerged over the last few days. We must stand up to Putin and those who prop up his regime. Mr. Speaker, Roman Abramovich is the owner of Chelsea Football Club and various other high-value assets in the United Kingdom. He's a person of interest to the Home Office because of his links to the Russian state and his public association with corrupt activity and practices. Last week, the Prime Minister said that Abramovich is facing sanctions. He later corrected the record to say that he isn't. Well, why on earth isn't he?
Mr. Speaker, it's not appropriate for me to comment on individual cases at this stage, but what I can say, and I stand, Mr. Speaker, by what I've said in the House and what we've put on the record. But be in no doubt that the actions that we've already taken, that this House has already taken, are having an effect in Moscow. And by exposing the ownership of properties of companies in the way that we are, by sanctioning 275 individuals, already a further 100 last week, the impact is being felt. And what we will publish in addition, Mr. Speaker, is a full list of all those associated with the Putin regime. Of course, we have already announced sanctions on Putin and Lavrov themselves. I can tell the House that they will have heard what the President of the United States had to say last night. The vice is tightening on the Putin regime, and it will continue to tighten.
Keir Starmer.
I hear what the Prime Minister says and the way in which he puts it, and I hope that may mean we'll see some action in the near future. Last week, Putin summoned to the Kremlin the cronies who prop up his regime. They dipped their hands in the blood of Putin's war. Among them was Igor Shuvalov, Putin's former Deputy Prime Minister. Shuvalov owns 2 flats, not 5 minutes' walk from this House. They're worth over £11 million. He is on the EU sanctions list, but he's not on the UK sanctions list. When will the Prime Minister sort this out?
Mr. Speaker, I think the House should be proud of what we have done already, and I can tell him that there is more to be done, and thanks to the powers that this House and this government has taken, we can sanction any individual, any company connected with the Putin regime. And this government was amongst the first in Europe to ban Aeroflot, Mr. Speaker, from our skies. This government led the way last week in banning the use of SWIFT, Mr. Speaker. And if you talk to any of our European partners, he would understand the leading role the UK has already played and the impact that those sanctions are already having in Moscow. And as I've told him, the squeeze is growing and it will continue to grow on the Putin regime.
Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, I support the measures that have been taken so far. The ownership of Shuvalov's flats is registered under Sova Real Estate, which is actually owned by Shuvalov and his wife. We only know which oligarch lurks beneath that shell company because of the information obtained and disclosed by Alexei Navalny. Navalny, of course, was poisoned by the Russian state, and he now sits in a Putin jail. Transparency is essential to rooting out corruption. It should be built into our law, but it's not. And I'm ashamed that we only know about Shuvalov's Westminster flats because a dissident risked his life. Is the Prime Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I repeat that the UK, of course, is doing everything that we can to expose ill-gotten Russian loot. And this has been something that we've been working on for a long time. That we actually were the first to impose sanctions on those who who are guilty for the poisoning of Alexei Navalny that he mentions. But what we are bringing forward now is the exposure of the ownership of properties in London and across the whole of the UK in a way that has not been possible before, and that I believe will continue to tighten the noose around Putin's regime. But be in no doubt, it was the UK, Mr. Speaker, that led the way on putting sanctions on the Russian central bank, on putting sanctions on Russian banks altogether, and I'm afraid that we're still out in advance of several of our friends and partners. We want them to go further. I believe that they will, and we will continue to put pressure, Mr. Speaker, ineluctable pressure on the Putin regime.
Here's Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister refers to the long overdue economic crime bill, which, to be clear, we support and will vote through on Monday with speed. The key plank to that bill is a register of who truly owns property in the United Kingdom. But it doesn't come into force for existing owners like Shuvalov until 18 months after the bill passes. At best, that's autumn 2023. Far too long for the Ukrainian people. Why are we giving Putin's cronies 18 months to quietly launder their money out of the UK property market and into another safe haven?
Mr. Speaker, the impact of what the UK is doing, and the impact of and I think the whole House should be proud of what we have done, because we have led the way on this. We led the way on SWIFT, we led the way on Aeroflot, we led the way on freezing the assets of banks. And if he asks about the speed of results, Mr. Speaker, I can tell him that on Thursday, the Russian stock market fell by $250 billion worth of assets that were wiped off. The ruble fell by about 40%. We're now in the third day, Mr. Speaker, in which the Russian stock market has not been able to open. That is thanks to the package of global sanctions, or Western sanctions, that the UK has led in enforcing on the Putin regime. And I think he should acknowledge that.
Stop.
I have acknowledged it, and I do again. What I'm offering is support to speed this up. On Monday, the Prime Minister knows he has the House with him when this economic crime bill goes through. We could do this on Monday at speed, and I think the whole House would welcome that. So it's an invitation to work together, Prime Minister. The Business Department published a white paper this week. It rightly sets out that the UK's companies register is being exploited to further the interests of the UK's enemies, to help them move stolen money into the West. But the same department, on the very same day, published an economic crime bill which did nothing to address this, leaving Companies House untouched and still exploited. So will the Prime Minister work with us to amend the bill on Monday to include the most basic reforms like identity checks for directors?
As I've said, Mr. Speaker, we are bringing forward at an accelerated pace measures to whip aside the veil of anonymity of those who own assets in this country and those who own property in this country. And furthermore, Mr. Speaker, we are going to be publishing a list of all those, Mr. Speaker, who have assets that are related to the Putin regime. I'm delighted by the support that the Right Honourable Gentleman is offering. If we can work together to make sure that we strengthen and accelerate the package, then all the better.
Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, we will work in that spirit and bring forward amendments on Monday to try and achieve all the ends that I've identified in these questions. And I think this can be voted through on Monday at speed with the full support of the House. And I'm very pleased that we can show that unity with the Ambassador here watching us. In this week of darkness, we have seen glimmers of hope in the resolve of Ukraine, in the unity of our allies, and in the bravery of Russian protesters. They remind us that the Russian people are not our enemy. They are the victims of thieves who've stolen their wealth and stolen their chance of democracy. For too long, Britain has been a safe haven for stolen money. Putin thinks that we're too corrupted to do the right thing and put an end to it. Does the Prime Minister agree that this House and this country stands united in our support for Ukraine, and now is the time to sanction every oligarch and crack open every shell company so we can prove Putin wrong.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, and that's why this government has brought forward the unprecedented measures that we have. And I know that the whole House will agree with me that nothing we do in rooting out corruption and corrupt money in London or any other capital should for 1 minute, and I want to agree with him very strongly, should for 1 minute distract from where the true blame for this crisis lies, which is wholly and exclusively and entirely with Vladimir Putin and his regime. And I'm glad that the benches opposite are resolved as we are that Putin must fail in his venture, and that we must ensure, Mr. Speaker, that we protect a sovereign, free and independent Ukraine. And that is what we are going to do. And with the unity of this House, Mr. Speaker, with the continued heroism and resolve of the Ukrainian people, which is so amazing, that we've seen over the last few days, and with the unity of the West that we are seeing, which I think has also taken aback President Putin, I've no doubt at all, Mr. Speaker, that he will fail and that we will succeed in protecting Ukraine.
He'll perish. It's you.